Hi friends and family. This is going to be a little sidebar in our overall conversation about how to play fantasy football. And this video is really just for those of you who don't know anything about football. So if you already know about football, you know how the game basically progresses, you know all the essential positions and what each guy is responsible for doing, you don't have to watch this. You can move right to the first video in the series, which is Fantasy Football 101. But if you are a person who is starting to feel confused by all this talk of wide receivers and tight ends, you're feeling intimidated maybe, like perhaps you shouldn't even be playing fantasy football, then this is the video for you. And no shame. The first year that I played fantasy football, I was exactly in the same position. I managed to come in second in my league that year, so you can do this. It's not going to be a big, long, drawn-out conversation about all the nuances of the football game. Just going to give you an overview and focus particularly on the things that are relevant for fantasy football. So I hope at the end of this video you kind of feel like you have a better understanding of how the game works, and also hopefully a little confidence about your ability to successfully manage your fantasy football team. So let's get started. I'm going to bring out our first visual aid. Ooh. I know, fancy, right? Okay, so this diagram represents a football field, obviously not drawn to scale. On our field are two teams, a red team and a blue team. And currently, the blue team is playing offense and the red team is playing defense. And what this means is that the blue team has the ball, and they are trying to move the ball all the way down the field and cross the goal line, which is called a touchdown. The red team is trying to prevent that from happening. And here's how that goes down. Start with these five guys here in the middle, these five blue X's. We're not going to talk too much about them because while they are very important in the game of actual football, they are not at all important in the game of fantasy football. These guys are not allowed to touch the ball, and so therefore they don't do anything that can get us points in fantasy football, so we don't draft these guys, we don't even talk about them. The only reason I'm mentioning them at all is because this guy in the middle, who's called the center, is the guy who has the ball when the play starts. So here we are. This line in between the two teams is called the line of scrimmage. That is it's the line wherever the play is about to take place. All right, so the center has the ball. The center tosses the ball back to the quarterback. That's called the snap. So now the quarterback has the ball. Quarterback, as you might know, is really important both in the game of football and in fantasy football. And one of the reasons the quarterback is so important is because he calls the play. And that means he explains to all the rest of the players on the team how the play is going to go down. Another reason that the quarterback is important is because sometimes he has to do a lot of planning on the fly. So once the quarterback has the ball, he kind of has to decide what to do with the ball. There's several different things the quarterback can do with the ball, and the first thing we're going to talk about is passing. So if the quarterback decides to pass the ball, chances are he's passing to one of these guys, a wide receiver or a tight end. So we'll start with the wide receivers. As you can see, these guys are positioned on the field out wide from the quarterback. They're way out on the ends of the line. Thinking is that perhaps they can get free, run all the way down the field, and the quarterback can throw a really long pass to them. They can catch it, run a few steps over the goal line. Anyway, that's the dream, right? So those are your wide receivers. If the quarterback decides alternatively to throw the ball to the tight end, chances are the throw's going to be a little shorter, right? It's not going to be quite as long of a pass because the tight end is positioned closer to the quarterback. So, he's in tight with the quarterback. You get it. All right, so those are the guys that will be on the receiving ends of the passes most of the time. That's passing. Another thing that a quarterback might decide to do is to hand off the ball. And that literally means that he puts the ball in the hands of one of the players on his team. Chances are, if the quarterback decides to hand off the ball, it's going to be to one of these guys, running backs. The quarterback literally puts the ball in their hands, sometimes throws them the ball, but generally speaking, it won't be a long throw. It'll be a very short toss. And then it's the running back's job to run as far as they can with the ball before they get tackled or get across the goal line. So the quarterback can throw the ball, the quarterback can hand the ball off. There's a third thing that the quarterback can do with the ball that we're going to talk about because it's becoming increasingly relevant in fantasy football because it seems like there's more and more quarterbacks who are doing it. That is that if the quarterback looks around and the opposing team's defense has done a particularly good job of blocking all these players so that none of them are eligible, he can't throw the ball to anyone, he can't hand the ball off to anyone, the quarterback might decide to run with the ball himself. Usually that's called scrambling, and in general it's not going to be a long run, it's just going to be several yards. Now there's exceptions to that, and some quarterbacks scramble quite long distances. And like I say, there seems to be this new breed of quarterback that really likes to do that. Traditionally speaking, that was discouraged. As you can see, all these guys kind of form a pocket of protection around the quarterback, and you really don't want the quarterback to be injured like he might be if one of these guys on the defense gets to him and tackles him. But, you know, you get points in fantasy football if you have a quarterback who scrambles, so might not be the worst thing ever to get one of those quarterbacks, right? Okay, so those are all the things the quarterback might do with the ball. This is the way the play progresses. The offense has 4 tries to move the ball 10 yards. And this is hard to do because all these guys are going to try to stop that from happening. If they are successful, if they manage to move the ball 10 yards or more in 4 tries or less, then they get 4 more tries. And those tries are called downs, okay? So they have 4 downs in which to attempt to move the ball 10 yards, right? And if they manage to do that, they get 4 more downs. And potentially that can keep happening over and over again until they manage to move the ball all the way down the field and cross the goal line for a touchdown. Alternatively, the red team's defense might be successful in stopping them from doing that, right? So we're going to talk a little bit about the ways in which the defense might stop the blue team from being successful. One thing they might do is tackle players who have the ball. Another thing they might try to do is intercept the ball. And what that means is if the quarterback is throwing the ball, let's say he's intending the pass to be caught by a wide receiver who's moved up the field to here, some of these guys might come over and actually try to catch the ball themselves. And if they are successful in doing that, that's called an interception. Another thing that might happen is one of these guys might drop the ball. If the ball's still in play, one of these guys can come along, grab the ball, and move the ball the other way on the field, potentially get a touchdown if they can get all the way to their goal line. Another thing that a defense might try to do is called sack the quarterback. And what that means is while we're behind the line of scrimmage, the quarterback has the ball, so it's after the snap. These guys will rush in and try to tackle the quarterback. And if they're successful, that's called sacking the quarterback. So that's another thing they might try to do. So that's basically how the game goes. If these guys are successful in their attempt and they cross the goal line, they get 6 points. They have a couple of options, right? So one of the things they might be able to do is go for a 2-point conversion. And that's where at the 2-yard line, so really, really close to the goal line, both teams line up and the blue team will get 1 shot to get the ball across the goal line again. If they do that successfully, they get 2 points. Thus, it's called the 2-point conversion. It's really hard to do, though. So most of the time, the team will, after they get a 6-point touchdown, they will opt to try for 1 extra point. And when that happens, they bring out the kicker. So the kicker comes out, both teams line up again at the 2-yard line, and the kicker attempts to kick the ball through the goalposts, and they get 1 extra point for that. And that's called a PAT, point after touchdown. 99% of the time, literally 99% of the time, they're successful. So most always, touchdown equals 7 points because it's 6 points for the actual touchdown, 1 point for the PAT. And then the other team gets the ball. And so you have the same situation happening all over again, but this time the blue team's defense comes out, the red team's offense comes out, and they're going to try to drive their ball all the way down the field, across their goal line. And that's how the game of football is played. I want to mention one other thing that the kicker can do. It's relevant, of course, for regular football, but it's particularly exciting in fantasy football. And that is called the field goal. So here's what might happen. We'll bring our original visual aid back out. The blue team's been trying real hard to drive the ball down the field to get to the goal line, but they have been unsuccessful. They only have one try left, and they're too far away to risk using up that try in any of the traditional ways we talked about, by passing or running. They just don't think they can do it. So in that case, they might bring out their kicker. Both teams line up. The kicker comes out. Kicker can be anywhere in this range, depending on where the play stopped. Kicker tries to kick the ball through the goalpost. If he's successful, that's called the field goal, and he gets 3 points for that. But what's really good is for fantasy football, the further away the kicker is from the goalpost when they try to kick the ball through the goalpost, the further away they are, the more points you can get. So there you go. Basically, we've talked about all the parts of the game that are involved in fantasy football. So we talked about the offense, which consists of the quarterback, the running backs, wide receivers, and tight ends. And we talked about the defense. In fantasy football, you don't draft individual defensive players, you draft an entire team's defense. So you might have the Buffalo Bills defense, you might have the Patriots defense, whatever defense you have, whatever any of these defensive players do that is point getting, you, as long as you own that defense, get the points for it, okay? We talked about the kicker. There is another position in fantasy football that doesn't exist in real football. I'll mention it now, but we'll go into greater detail when we talk about how to get points in fantasy football. And that is called the flex position. Doesn't exist in football, okay? But in fantasy football, you can fill your flex position with any one of these players. Running backs, wide receivers, or tight ends. That's it. So see, you know all you need to know now. Basically, all you need to know is how the game progresses and what each of the players that are going to be on your team, what kinds of things they're responsible for, and now you know that. So I think you know enough to go ahead and watch the first video in the series, the Fantasy Football 101. But if you want to, go ahead and play this video again so that you can maybe memorize the positions. I don't think you need to do that, though. I think you have everything you need to know. So I will see you at the next video, and good luck.